Hi, I'm Bob Madison. My talk will take you on an 87-mile journey into the interior of western New England. You can use my watercolors and pictures as a guide to imagine how difficult it was to travel some 2 centuries ago. All royalties from my book and donations go to pay for a unique canal signage. This canal signage is to be gifted to historical societies along the trail. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy my presentation.
Thank you all for coming tonight. We're welcoming you here to the Simsbury Free Library. This was the town's original art library, built in 1890 by Amos Eno, who's up on above our door. And the public library moved in the 80s to its current location, and we are remaining a genealogical and historical research library. And we like to host these events to bring people in and have people feel comfortable coming and staying and visiting and joining whenever they'd like to. So thank you all for coming. Without further ado, I'll introduce Robert Madison and let him describe his grand adventure.
Thank you very much. My interest in the book, 25 years, 1825, as you may or may not know, when they finished the Erie Canal, they came over to Connecticut and Massachusetts, and they started building a canal from New Haven all the way to Northampton, some 87 miles. And my interest in this was in high school, junior in high school, to catch a bus, I would walk across the canal. But I didn't know the canal was there. It was next to my folks' house, had water in it, cans, dirty things, vines and whatnot. But it wasn't maybe 30 plus years later, I went to a lecture by Dr. Carl Walter in Westfield Library. And listened to his lecture, I said, that was the canal that went right by my house. And across the street, bulldozers came in, they knocked it down, they built houses on it. I said, what a shame. So in my adult life, I thought maybe it's important to write a book about the canal, but from my perspective, a book could be boring. It's 20 feet wide at the bottom, 36 feet wide at the top, and 4 feet minimum deep, etc. Then it dawned on me that today, they're building rail trails on the canal. They're tearing up the tracks, and where the towpath was, they put the rail trails on it. Those are gone, and they paved it. So I decided to write a book about the canal, which went through 87 miles from New Haven to Northampton. And they started at Congamon Lakes, or Granby, or East Granby, or Suffield, or Southwick. In the time frame, the borders around this area kind of moved a little bit. But basically, there are 28 locks going south to New Haven, and 32 locks going this way to Northampton. This is kind of a cross-section of the canal. But basically, this is a canal, 28 locks. We have the long level from Southington all the way to Granby. And we kind of go up and down to Westfield and finally arrive at 105 feet at Connecticut River. Now up here is Southwick, that's 220 feet above sea level. This is the Greenway or the railroad, the way it exists today. Now, what I'm trying to accomplish here is that I'm trying to make people aware that a canal crossed and went this way. Some people know about it, but I found an awful lot of people are totally unaware of this. When I wrote my book and I go to these lectures, most people are totally unaware that a canal existed in western Massachusetts and western Connecticut. So the idea is money raised from the book and donations will go toward these signs. And I'll explain a little bit later on where they're going to go. But basically, we've costed it out. All the money goes to the Southwick Historical Society. They're just collecting the money. Each one of these signs will cost $300. Each town will get 2. It'll be the sign along with the name of the town. For example, Simsbury be the Simsbury Historical Society, and Southwick could be the Southwick Historical Society. There'll be a bar here and a 10-foot long galvanized post. We'll just give these as a gift to each historical society to put them wherever they want to. And I'll get into this a little later too. The next one down is the front cover of my book. The canal passed through 16 towns. When we get to Simsbury, or chapter 8, the 8th town going north, I'll describe how my book is organized. Okay, next slide. So, starting in New Haven, the part of the canal, or the rail trail in New Haven, goes pretty much through the city. But at this point here is Yale campus. And at this point, it's well marked, well paved as you go north. And there are a few places in Plainville and Southington, East Hampton, or Southampton in Massachusetts, where you have to go off the Greenway, if you will, off trail and go on street. And I'll explain that later on. Now, each of the 16 chapters have watercolors. This happens to be my watercolor in New Haven Harbor. In 1839, the Amistad slave ship, which I believe everybody's familiar with through TV programs, was in the harbor. So what I did is I put the slave ship, the Amistad, in the harbor, and here's the canal boat. This same canal boat goes through every single one of the 16 towns. And I've picked out something unique in each town. So we could pick up on it, and each town would kind of recognize that this is where the canal went. But we'll go back one more, please. So here is a basin. The tides go up and down. So what they had is a lock system, so that when the tides went at a certain level, they would open up the gates. The canal boat would go in or out, and it'd be at the right level to go up into lock 28 to start going north. Okay, next slide. Now, a lot of my information came from Ruth Hummel and Carl Walter. They both created these maps of the canal system from New Haven all the way to Northampton. And Dr. Carl Walter saved me a tremendous amount of time and research and figured out where the canal was. And one of the biggest things I get with the canal is, with the book, now people can look at the book and say, oh, this is where the canal is. And the other thing about my book is, now people know where they can go. You know, if you're going north into Westfield, it stops and it goes on the street. But if you want to continue on, I have directions street by street how to get back up into the paved greenway, if you will. Okay, next one. So here's the Dr. Carl Walter's map of New Haven Harbor. This is Route 95 as it exists today. But way back when, it was all water. But here is the basin. Okay, next slide, I have a Google. The same thing. All this was filled in. Again, this is Route 95, and this is where the basin is, just to get you a perspective of what happens over 2 centuries. Okay, next one. This is just a picture of the New Haven Harbor, the way it exists today. This is New Haven Yale campus. At this point here, you're on street, and at this point here, the paved canal goes north. A very nice canal, very visible and well maintained. In fact, there are security. Every time I was there was always someone with a bright yellow jacket on, and security with a bicycle going up and down the greenway. Here's an example just north of the Yale campus. These tracks are still there. Here's the paved greenway, if you will. And this is really where the towpath was, and this is really where the canal was. Now it's been filled in. So next town, Hamden, there's Lock 14. It's all nicely well paved. This building exists. The canal is there, but there's no water, no canal boat. But if you go to the next slide, we'll flip the next one over. This is what's left of the Lock 14. This is the lockkeeper's house. If you drive on Route 10, you could park behind the lockkeeper's house and walk to here, and also see the canal and look around. You actually walk in there. That's what I did to take this picture. Next town up is Cheshire. Now, Cheshire did an outstanding job here. The Farmington Canal Park, they reconstructed the lock system. And that's where my book cover came from. But what I did is I superimposed a canal boat, a steam engine, and a bicyclist on the in that vicinity. Okay, next. So again, this is Lock 12. This is my book cover. And this is my watercolor of the lockkeeper's house, the canal boat. If you ever have a chance, they have a museum there, they have good parking, and there's always somebody on the rail trail bicycling. It's just a nice area to visit. Okay. This is, I'll picture the Lock 12. It doesn't work, if you will, but it's a good representation of what it looked like. Okay. Next town up is Southington. Now, at this point, the rail trail is nice. The Greenway is nice. It's a nice area. You can park here at the Milldale train depot and go north, except that it stops right here, and I have a photograph of what it looks like when it stops. So you have to get onto Route 10 for a while until you get to Norton Park in Plainville. Okay. This is the Southington's long level. It's flat, no locks for 26 miles from Southington all the way to Granby. And this is an example of the long level, if you will. In Milldale train depot, behind here you can park. This is a nice rail trail, very flat, very interesting. You have a lot of little signs and whatnot to explain where you're at and what the history of the canal was in Southington. This is on street Route 10. Unfortunately, someday I'm sure Southington will finish it. And it will be a project, but at this point you have to go on street. Next town up is Plainville. This Norton Park is a nice place to park your car. It's a regular park. But this is kind of on street, a little bit of well-marked rail trail, but it's still on street. Right here, though, is the Plainville Historical Society. In the next couple of slides, but wait, if you go back, I stood about here, and you go forward now. This part of the canal exists in Norton Park. What I did is I stood on a bridge, and this is where I put my watercolor in. Of interest, last year, my wife and I, it was our 50th anniversary. So we went to Europe, we took the Viking tour, you know the one you see on TV? It was very interesting. So I learned an awful lot about locks and canal boats. Okay, next one. So this is the Plainville Historical Society. They have a lot of information. They have pictures about the canal, different watercolors, and different demonstrations. A couple more pictures of the museum. Again, this is on street in Plainville, but they do have some canal crossing signs. But at this point, if you're looking west, the canal still exists, if you will. This is a picture by Dr. Carl Walter in 1992. But this is not on street. This is west of this picture into the woods. Next town up is Farmington. Now here is a little bit of a well-marked on street, if you will, from Plainville. But at this point here, and this is on street, but at this point the canal, the rail trail, is pretty much well-marked all the way from here to Westfield, Massachusetts, downtown. It's well-marked. Everybody's done a great job. We'll go back one more. I want to show something here. But in my book, so the railroad, the Greenway, a rail trail goes this way. But of interest, the canal is far, far away from it. This is where the canal goes. Following Route, this is Route 10. So the canal kind of zigzags around here. And at this point here, if you're ever on Route 10, there's a sign there that says the Aqueduct Historic Site. You can park your car. They have some signs. You can actually walk along the towpath with the canal to the right of you, and you can walk down to the Farmington River. It's a nice place to stop. But it's important to know that this is where the rail trail goes, and this is where the canal goes. This is my watercolor of the Farmington Canal Aqueduct. If you go to the next couple of slides, this is the crossing to the Farmington River by bicycle. Again, the Farmington River. This is the abandoned railroad depot in Farmington. If we go forward, another one. Now I got to have a couple pictures. This is Carl Klausler, 1868, a picture of the aqueduct going over the Farmington River. And I use this as a guide in terms of how to put my watercolor together. The next slide is also, this is the rock foundation as it exists today. If you park your car, walk down the canal, and walk down on Farmington River, you will see the remains, if you will, of the foundation on the, I believe, the west side of the Farmington River. Next town up is Avon, the rail trail. This is where the rail trail goes, but the canal kind of zigzags back and forth. The canal goes a little west on Route 44. It goes underneath Route 44. And here, the Avon Historical Society has a few plaques. I guess we go next one up. Oh, okay, but this is the freight house that was next to the Avon Museum that they have downtown. I believe that's called the museum. But this is Route 44 of the Albany Turnpike. This freight house exists. I am told that they moved it a long time ago. In terms of the rail trail, you have to follow this part, and it goes underneath Route 44. So you kind of get, this is downtown Avon. This is where the canal actually went. But you kind of go around and zigzag till you come back to Sperry Park, which is back to a well-marked rail trail. This is downtown Avon, and the canal went right through here between these two buildings. The next one. And these signs, the Avon Historical Society has put these plaques up, one on both sides of Route 44, to give you an idea where the canal went. Now, the next town up is Simsbury, so I've got a few slides now just to demonstrate how my book is organized. So, Simsbury, Section 8, also known as the Farmington Canal. In doing research, I chose New Haven Northampton Canal Greenway as the title. But in reality, there are more than 18 different trail names by different advocacy groups along the route. So each town, more or less, has a group of people in the past and present who maintain the rail trail, if you will, the Greenway, or caused it to happen in the first place within the town. So in terms of Simsbury, the East Coast Greenway, the Farmington Canal, the Farmington Valley Greenway, the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail, and the Farmington River Trail, which is kind of a little spike off from the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. Then I have the route to go from Simsbury to Terrifield. I have the distance of 5.5 miles, roughly 40 minutes to ride a bicycle. Ride details, skill level is easy to moderate. Then I talk a little bit about the canal itself. And then I show a picture of, in each chapter, a picture of something related to the Greenway or the bicycle path. Next slide. So each map, I have a description of, a legend, if you will, what is in the map. And now if we go to the next slide, we should show the map of Simsbury. What I have is places you can see or park. You can see the canal kind of goes zigzag back and forth across Route 202. But this is all nicely marked Canal Greenway, if you will, a bicycle path. Okay, next slide. Now, I show I start a certain place in Avon, and I end at a certain place in Simsbury. And I show left and right, left and right. I give you quite detailed instructions as to where to go, in the miles, if you will. Then I show where to park. I also have, so you can put the address in your GPS or something, and you drive there and find out exactly where to park your car. Okay, next slide is a little history of Simsbury. I have a little history of the canal. Where's the canal? And I talk about the canal in Simsbury. The following slide is my watercolor. Now this is on the, this is not quite on a Farmington Canal Heritage Trail. It's Old Canalway off of Hot Meadow Street. But the canal is there. It's got water in it. You can drive up there, park your car, walk down the towpath, if you will. And this is just my rendition as to what the canal may have looked like a long time ago. The following slide, just a little bit of, that's me. But then I say, I talk about the railroad too in each chapter. Where's the railroad? And I give a little history of the railroad. And the next slide, I talk about, this is Simsbury, the depot in Simsbury. There's, I believe, a caboose there and a place to park your car. I talk about where to repair your bicycle if you have a problem in Simsbury. Then I talk a little bit about off-trail excursions, or what to see in Simsbury. And on the next slide, if my book heads north, All the detailed descriptions tell you how to go north. But say you want to go the other direction. So heading south. That's right. Heading south. This is what the course you take. So you can go north or south. Good. So the next slide is, okay, this is Old Canal Way, I just saw earlier, my watercolors. And that's the painting there. Now, in terms of my watercolors, they are in color. In fact, in 1825, they didn't have cameras. It wasn't until like Civil War that they had cameras. They were just black and white. And it wasn't until like World War II that they came up with color in books. So I decided I don't show color. Everything, my paintings are just black and white. Just quite on purpose. People want to see the color ones, and I do have them, but I show them very infrequently. So this is the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail in Simsbury. We can go to the next slide. This is again Old Canal Way, which if you've never been there, it's a drive. I mean, it's a short drive from here. But here's the canal, and here's the towpath, 2 centuries old. And this is the Simsbury Railroad Depot. You can see bicyclists here parking their car and they get ready to ride their bicycles. Now, a week and a half ago, Dr. Carl Walter, in terms of these signs, where do you put the signs? I mean, it's up to each historical society as to where they want to put the signs. But he took me into down, this is a hot meadow. Whoop. Oh, did I do that? Ah, it works now. Sir, thank you. Excellent job. Don't go too far, though. So, Carl Walter showed me where the canal passed. So, what we're saying is, it went right across the street, right here, and right past the house. Now, this church was not there when the canal. The church was apparently this section, if you will, of Hot Meadow Street. I don't know what the church looked like 2 centuries ago, but they built it here, so the canal crosses over here, crosses over Plank Hill Road, and goes behind this white house. Hopefully, maybe a sign could go here, one of these signs that we're proposing. Again, Carl is showing me where the canal passed, here, and again across the front of, actually through these steps in the back of the house. Another place in Simsbury, the address is 1486. I got the address from Google. But if you're going south into Simsbury, these tobacco barns are still there. And Carl is demonstrating where the canal crossed. And the canal was right through here, but most people don't know it. I'm sure everybody's driven back and forth in Route 20210 and past these tobacco barns and didn't know that the canal crossed there. And it's more south of Simsbury, there's also room for more signs, but we're only going to donate 2 signs to each historical society, but more can be purchased, but they're $300 each, with the whole thing, including the posts. Oops. So, in terms of the signs, everybody understands these symbols. Tony the Tiger, GE, Disney World. What it's trying to do here is, along the 87 miles where the canal crosses the road, trying to zero in on this type of a sign. Now it buzzed again. I don't know what's going to happen. But this is purely for recognition. Each town could do whatever they want to do. But they are going to get these signs as you're driving up Route 20210 and you're gone another 20, 30 miles and you see this sign, you can connect the dots and say, oh, the canal actually went this far. That's the goal. We have enough money, though, for 2 signs. I think we have 4 towns now we can have signs for. Again, this is all going to be gifted. Next town up is East Granby, the rail trail. This is all well marked. A little bit off. They tell me there's a nursery here, so in East Granby you kind of go on the street a little bit, but it's well marked. East Granby's Canal Arch. This arch is my watercolor of the arch in Cranbrook Park. This is a sketch by Eric Sloan of the same arch. This is the arch the way it existed prior to 1934. But what happened is they had a flood. This arch here opening in the backside, logs and trees got caught in the backside of this and acted as a huge dam. And apparently this huge dam caused so much problems that I'm told the Army Corps of Engineers just tore the whole thing down. So what you have now is this railroad trestle, or a Greenway bridge, if you will, over Salmon Brook in Cranbrook Park. So you can drive down there, park your car, and this is all very visible. Going north a little bit, East Granby Station. This railroad depot exists today. Granby Rail Trail. Now, at this point here, Route 189, this is Route 20 going to Bradley Airport. This is the, was it the Hartford Turnpike, Route 189? At this point here, there are 6 locks that bring you up to the level of 220 feet to Congamon Lake. And on the other side of Congamon Lake, there's a whole series of locks that bring you back down to Westfield. So I have, this is my rendition of those 6 locks the way it looks. And Route 189 passes right through here. This is Salmon Brook. Well, this is the actual color of the watercolor. But nobody knows this exists. This is the first time I think anybody's ever seen any kind of representation of what the locks look like. Now,
And that's in Granby?
yes. Yes, it's just this is the Cranbrook Park right here. This is where the railroad depot is. And a little bit north, which is down the hill, if you will, is where the 6 locks are. Again, nobody knows this. And this is one of the other reasons why I'm trying to get these signs put up along well-traveled roads so people are aware of it. Now here, this is, let me see. This is Route 189 here. Salmon Brook is here, and the canal system is here, and this is where the locks went up. And this is my thought process of what the locks could have looked like way back when. But there are definitely 6 locks, 2 locks on this side of the road, and 4 locks on this side of the road. My watercolor shows all 6 locks. But at this point way up here, it's 220 feet above sea level. Someday you'll see, hopefully, some signs there. Suffield's the next town up. Now the property lines between Massachusetts and Connecticut, I'm told, changed a little bit throughout history. But this is Congamon Lakes. This is West Suffield. This is Granby, Southwick. Now there's a guard gate to prevent water from escaping Congamon Lake and heading down the canal into Long Island Sound. The problem was at this point, once they built this, Southwick said, "You can't steal my water." So what they had to do is, at the other side of the guard gate, into Granby, they had a couple mile long cut, if you will, for water going from Salmon Brook to into the canal at this point. I think the Massachusetts-Connecticut line is a package store, a little grill there. Very close to that is where the cut was to fill water up into the canal. It's not well marked, but I'm told that the ditch is still there. This is what the guard gate looks like today. If you're on the canal, you'll see this. It's steel and concrete, but it exists. Again, it prevents the water from escaping Congamon Lake into the canal or the brook. West Suffield's Rail Trail. This is the Mass-Connecticut line. This is, by the way, one of the tours that Carl Walters gave several years ago. I think the last tour he's made. Southwick, Congamon Lake. This is, again, this is well made. This is the railroad. This is the canal rail trail. It's excellent trail. At this point here, Mountain Road, there's the Red Riding Hood restaurant. Now, 2 months ago, I stopped, I talked to the owner, and I gave her 3 books. I asked her, could you sell them? She said, sure. By the time I got home, she said the books were gone. So I went back, I gave her 7 more books. A week later, she called back, those are gone. So I gave her 10 more books. Those are gone, so she has now the 3rd set of 10 books. But apparently people who ride the bicycle trail quite a bit saw the book and they started buying it. So now we got up to Congamon Lake from Granby. Now we have to get back down to Westfield. So there are 8 locks in Southwick getting you down to the level of Westfield, which I'll talk about on the next slide. This is Shaker Farms Country Club, for example. And you can see that the rail trail, the railroad, goes one way, and the canal kind of snakes its way around the mountains. Now, this is the North Pond. At this point here, you're 220 feet above sea level. This is South Longyard Road, goes right through here. And this is 4 locks. Now, I stood here with Dr. Carl Walter when he was showing me all this. So I was looking up and I tried to imagine what it looked like. So again, this is another representation of what it could have looked like 2 centuries ago, but nobody ever seen it in this fashion. And the folks in Southwick really can't believe that this was the lock system. It's gone now. You can walk down here and kind of visualize where the locks were, but the 55 flood took the whole thing away. So nothing exists, but there is a field down here, and I don't know whose property we were walking on, but we didn't tell anybody. We just went there. Southwick Rail Trail. This is Congamon Lake. This is on my kayak. This is the southern part of Congamon Lake, and this is where the canal is. At that time I took the picture, I didn't go very much further because I didn't know what was down there. I didn't want to go down there and get in trouble, so this is as far as I went. But now I know better. You can actually go down there all the way to that guard gate with a kayak or canoe. Westfield. The rail trail is nice, well paved. You could park here at Shaker Farms Country Club or park downtown. They just have this little extension finished. And that downtown Westfield, though, it stops right there. You've got to get on street and go head north. Notice that Route 20210 kind of follows this way, and the rail trail kind of goes this way. But downtown, you have to get on street and go all the way north on Lockhouse Road. And that's why they named Lockhouse Road Lockhouse, because there were all these locks right before you get to Route 90 or Mass Turnpike. This is the Little River Aqueduct. It looks very much like the Farmington River Aqueduct. Now, I'm going to go back one. I grew up somewhere right in here in high school. This is where the canal went along Shaker Road. So the aqueduct is here. This is my rendition of it. Again, Carl Walter and I walked down here. Columbia Manufacturing is way over here. The rail trail is way over here. The Westfield shops off of Route 20 is way over here. So I stood here for this from the watercolor. But the interesting thing is, you can see right here, the foundations are still there for the canal. Now this is water, by the way. This aqueduct is filled with water. There's a path here for the horses to walk across, but this whole thing is filled with water, and it's from Shaker Road in Westfield. It goes all the way downtown Westfield until you get to Lockhouse Road, all flat, no locks. And with the horses themselves, they blindfold them as they go across the river because they get spooked. And the only way you could do it safely is to blindfold the horses. Columbia Greenway in Westfield. What I like to see someday is in Southington, they have this stone monument, if you will, showing the route of the rail trail and the canal. Someday I'd like to see them do the same thing in Southwick, to say this is where the canal left the railroad and the rail trail, worked its way along the mountains through Congamon Lake, down up and down locks, until you get to this point in Westfield, and to show you where the rail trail, the canal comes back, if you will, to the rail trail. Now this telephone pole is there, and if you were on the right here is, I'm trying to think, the shopping center. But if you look right here into the woods, you see all kinds of railroad ties and railroad tracks, because Columbia Manufacturing is in the field, if you will, there. But again, the canal leaves the rail trail and the railroad from Southwick until you get to this point into Westfield, and it rejoins itself. And in Westfield, right now the tracks are maybe 20, 30 feet above the level of the terrain, and because they filled that in to build a railroad. But the canal itself was the same level as Route 20 or downtown Westfield. This is Westfield Train Depot. This train is heading toward Albany. Here is the Westfield River, but this track here is the old New Haven and Northampton Canal line, the railroad, the way it existed. And this same place is where the canal crossed. So this is a 1912 postcard. It gives you an idea of history, if you will, and the way it all changed. Next town up is Southampton. This is all on street. Southampton's kind of, they're working on the rail trail. They don't know quite what to do yet, but hopefully they will extend it into a modified paved rail trail. Now this Lyman and Eller storehouse exists today. The next couple of slides will show you the picture of the house and half of the lock system. But of course, none of this side here, nothing exists today. This is the way it exists today, though. This is Lyman and Eller storehouse at Route 20. Across the street is a ice cream shop, a little restaurant. This is the lock keeper's house. This is part of the canal, and this is the railroad tracks that go right through there. Again, this is a couple pictures of the Hampshire and Hampshire Canal. This is Carl Walter showing me where, when you open up the gates have to fit inside the wall because of how narrow the lock itself is, a little over 11 feet wide. So you have to build the gates so that they slide inside, if you will, the foundation here, the masonry wall. But these tracks are still there. I don't have the slides, but you can cross the street from here and follow the tracks into the woods, crossing the Manhan River, and the trestle is still there. They have a fence so you can't really cross it, but it's all still there. It's ready to be paved at some point in time. East Hampton is well paved, well marked from East Hampton all the way to Northampton. Downtown East Hampton, Manhan Rail Trail. This is Mount Tom in the background. They had a few locks in East Hampton, but pretty much it was flat. So any recognizable thing that I could come up with was the Mount Tom Range. Northampton, the last town, it kind of works its way through town. You have to get off a bona fide rail trail, if you will, a greenway, and go on street for a little bit. Then you pick it up again. But at this point here, you can go all the way to UMass campus, and they want to extend this all the way to Boston, little by little, in terms of another rail trail system. And you also, I think there's another part goes to Florence, Mass. This is the last watercolor picture I have. If you remember in New Haven, you had this basin where the canals, boats loaded and unloaded, if you will. In Northampton, you have the same thing, a basin, if you will, where canal boats stopped and loaded and unloaded. Now, interest, this canal was supposed to go, someone didn't invent the steam engine, this canal was supposed to go all the way to the St. Lawrence Seaway. Never happened, but it was a plan. This is Northampton's railroad depot, which exists today. Lots of trails in Northampton. They did a very good job of making trails, and they continue to expand them. This is the end of the rail trail, if you will, going over the Connecticut River. And that's it. Thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this little trip. Yes? Thank you. Any questions?
Why exactly do they call it the Farmington Canal? It's just one.
I don't know if anybody could answer that, but each town, like Westfield has a Columbia Greenway. I think that's the right pronunciation. Now I think of it, but each town, I don't know, I can't answer that. But this is the Farmington Valley, and I just picked up on the name. But they've asked me a number of times, why don't I name the book the Farmington Canal Greenway or something? But I just decided that the term is something above and beyond just Connecticut or Massachusetts. Yes,
How wide did you say the locks are?
about 11 feet.
Yeah, they're not wide. I mean, you could tell those boats are very
Yeah,
narrow.
because they made a very, very minimum width that they could. Some were masonry, some are wood. The wooden ones rotted away. But the canal itself was 20 feet at the bottom, 34, 36 feet at top, and a minimum of 4 feet deep. And even where the canal gates opened up, if the canal looked like it was 10 feet high, the locks, you still had additional 4 more feet below into the water, so the canal boats could leave. But it's roughly 11 feet wide.
Okay, can you describe that in full?
It's all in the book, yeah.
There's tow paths on both sides?
No, just one side. And their tow paths were 10 feet wide. Of interest, though, if you had a side of a mountain, what they would do is take the dirt from the top part of the hill or the mountain and make the gully and put it in the other side to make the tow path. So they didn't have to cart the dirt very far to create a tow path in a ditch. So you just took,
Boats pass one.
every so often they have, well, if it's 36 feet wide at the top, there was room.
But you only have one side for the horses.
Yeah. I don't know how they did that, quite frankly. They must have figured it out. But they do pass.
How wide were the boats and how long were they?
Roughly 70 to 75 feet long. Roughly 11 feet wide or short, 11 feet. But they're very narrow. And you could go from New Haven to Northampton by canal boat in 24 hours with a passenger boat. 24 hours. Now that's a big deal because 2 centuries ago, everything was dirt roads. You didn't have bridges. If it was raining out, it was muddy. So this canal system was a big deal at the time.
So it was passengers as well as freight.
Oh yeah, yeah. And down below, at the top deck, like if you ever go on a cruise, you go on the top of the ship and walk around. Well, that's what you did on these canal boats. And down below, they had seats that folded up on the side. And if you want to sleep at nighttime, they take the seats, the boards, and they flop it down, and that's the beds. And they'd have a curtain or something to separate the men from the women. That's the way they did it. And you stop at an inn or something to buy, supper or breakfast.
You know, it was relatively short-lived.
Yeah, roughly 20 years, yeah. Because somebody invented the steam engine, that was it. But in Europe, they still have the canals. I mean, and we still have the Erie Canal and several other canals in the United States. But this didn't quite work out. And one other comment, why build a canal in North Haven going north? In this time frame, 2 centuries ago, New Haven and Northampton would switch being capital city. Hartford would be 2 years. New Haven would be 2 years. Back to Hartford, 2 years. So New Haven wanted a route into the interior because Hartford had the Connecticut River. And they kind of controlled the Connecticut River. So New Haven wanted something, so this is one of the reasons they started it. And really, Route 10, if you follow Route 10 from New Haven, it goes all the way up to Vermont into Canada, or I'm pretty close to Canada. And that's the way the canal, kind of route followed. Yes, sir.
In terms of building the canal, is your boat put into the book, or in terms of the length of time it took? That had to be quite an endeavor.
A little bit. Carl Walter has a foreword in the book. I had 3 people, a canal expert, a road expert, and a rail trail expert, write a foreword in the book because, quite frankly, I'm not an expert on any one of these subjects. I just wanted to make people aware that a canal once existed in this area. And so far, I'm trying to succeed. But Dr. I don't know if you get it online, but Plainville Historical Society has Ruth Hummel. She has a book about the canal boat in Plainville, but it covers all the subjects. It's very interesting, in depth. But I don't know, my book you can buy it on Amazon, for example, but I don't know if you can buy her book on Amazon. I just never followed up on. Did you? Is it there?
When I looked it up, there were only several copies left. I was lucky enough to get one.
no.
This was a few years back.
Yeah.
I think the Plainville Historical Society has.
They have copies. I know that, yeah. And Ruth passed away a few years ago. I was fortunate enough to get her to sign it, but unfortunately, very, very knowledgeable person, just like Dr. Carl Walter is very knowledgeable. But I don't hold a candle to any of them. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm just going to bring up, we've been talking about Carl Walter all night because he is so, he is the breathing, living canal historian. And we worked with him at our library, and he has created maps. They look like these, and they're folded so that you can take them if you're going on the trails. But we have these available for you here too. A lot of you've used him, and
Oh, yeah.
it was nice to be able to celebrate him and get all of his information on these pages. So this is a set of them. There's one map for each of the 9 towns that go through Connecticut. So if this is something you're interested in, just let us know.
How much are
They're $5 a piece, $40 for the set, and they're $10 if you want a flat map, which are not laminated, but we just laminate them so they can be handled.
And we have them here if you want to look at them afterwards
Yeah.
for free.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Besides the passengers, what was the major cargo that they took?
Lumber, coal, bricks.
Coal and
Yeah.
everything
Probably
else.
the heavy stuff.
Bigger than that went on the.
Yeah, yeah. And it was very economical to move heavy stuff. Shingles, for example, and then bricks and coal and lumber.
You didn't do food, like wheat?
I think, yes. In fact, at Lyman's Lock 22, 21 in East Hampton, or Southampton, they would sell things that the canal boats brought up. So, I mean, there was other things, too, like, nails and flour and stuff like that, too. But it was an easy way to transport heavy goods. Yes, sir.
It had to be at least 4 feet deep.
Yes, minimum 4 feet.
Draft was how long?
I think a couple feet, really, yeah. Because these were very long boats, very narrow.
And 11 feet wide, but it's 70 feet long.
Yes, yeah, very long and narrow.
Big cargo.
Yep.
Do any of these boats exist?
No, I wish they did, because any one of these historical societies could grab a hold of them, have some sort of mystic seaport type thing going to rebuild them, but I'm not aware of any of them. And it's a shame. I think there were 80 to 90 boats in its heyday in existence, so they all went somewhere. Yes.
I'd like to thank you, Bob, for your presentation, and if I may have a few moments to share with you a little boat trip that I had.
Sure.
A friend of mine came to see me in February of 2000. He said, "You look terrible. We need to go somewhere." Well, he was supposed to be here tonight, but unfortunately he's birthdaying with his niece. He got me involved with a gentleman by the name of Tom Lewis. You can Google Tom Lewis, or you can find his website is tomlewis.net. And we went to England for a narrow boat cruise, which involved going in a circle of the Warwickshire ring. It was 102 miles, and it was 117 locks that we went through.
Wow.
We talked about the narrow boats, and in the narrow boats, I think they were 8 feet wide and 70 feet long. We had 6 people on a boat. We had two boats, and it was a tour. Tom Lewis was a Navy man for 25 years in England, but he was also a musician, and so part of this trip was being involved with the music. We stopped every night we stopped somewhere, they had something that was planned. It was a phenomenal trip, one that I'll never forget in my lifetime. Would like to go back again sometime, and just to go through it. Tom isn't doing it anymore, but it was really a great trip. And just to add a little bit for those, some of you know who I am, some of them don't. My name is Don Moore. I own Moore's Sawmill over in Bloomfield, where my boys are 5th generation to run the sawmill. And we have lumber in a lot of these places around here. And you mentioned the Amistad, the one that they built.
In Mississippi Port, the reproduction? Yeah.
They came up to me and got some lumber.
Oh, good. Any canal boats in your neighborhood? Any old canal boats sitting in the woods anywhere?
I don't know them, but
Are you sure about your?
we're in Bloomfield, just over the hill. And you also made reference to changes in and you can find this on the internet, I'm not sure just where it is, but you know how the Connecticut-Massachusetts line does one of these? Yeah. Well, there's a story that I heard, and I don't know, but you can go look at it. when the Massachusetts colony decided to define that, you know, that the line was straight across. But they got over here and on a Saturday night, they had a big beer party or something. The next day, they fell down. It went the wrong way. Now the story goes, I think it's 1735. Let's see. The Civil War was over, what, 17?
Yes, 1865? Yeah.
Okay, 1865. You said 17 something, confusing. But in 1835, two of the Moors petitioned the colony of Massachusetts and said, hey, that line is across there. You took that property away from us, because it was at that time Moor property. The Moor family owned not acres, but square miles of property. So they petitioned the colony, and two of the Moors got together, they petitioned, and they straightened it out. Well, then when the Civil War was over, the colony of Massachusetts getting more aggressive.
Civil War, we were states by then.
Yes, we were states by then. They wanted it back. Well, one of the Moors had passed away. One of them was in jail from being in the war, so there was nobody to protest it, and then they took it back. But that's part of what you can find that on whatever the History Channel is or somewhere. Because different people have mentioned that to me.
My favorite reason for the notches on Massachusetts are to slide into the ocean. I read that as one.
Just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you very much. No, it's all very interesting. It's all very interesting. A lot of history.
And it was just so interesting to see. Of course, Tom Lewis had done these canal trips before, and had been other directions around, but it was just one of the most exciting things that I'd ever done. And I've never been but in England, you talk about what they do. It was handling produce, and in particular for them back during the war, transmitting their troops went by canal from port to port and whatnot. But, just wanted to share with you.
Thank you. Very interesting. Yes.
It looks to me like it's a one-way traffic. Is it two-way?
It is two-way, yes. And they had basins too.
There's wide enough to two boats can pass?
Yes. No, they must have had ways of throwing the rope around the line, if you will, around the horses and the canal boats if somebody's going both ways. They must have had a technique. I don't know what it was. But yeah, because it was 36 feet wide at the top. So there was room. But you do have a problem of boats going two different directions and only a 10-foot wide towpath. But I'm sure they figured it out. I just don't know what they did. But not in the canal, though. You couldn't. In the lock system itself was very narrow. Yeah. As cheap as they can make it, they made it narrow and many times out of wood. And after 10, 15 years, the wood just rotted away. They had to replace it. Yes.
Just to add, I was going to mention that the locks in England were either one boat or two boats. And if it was one boat, you waited while one went through. But a lot of times it was two boats. The locks were wide enough for two boats is what we would do, because we were in two boats. We would just tie together and go in as one unit come out. But over there, and I'm sure that it was the same way around here, in the process of building the canal, there were a lot of areas that were pretty wide. They could be 50 feet wide, but there were also areas that were narrow. Of course, over there, I'll never forget one of our experiences. We tied up in a town, and right next to the water, there was a building built right down to the water. And we'd been out they took us out to dinner. We walked to wherever it was. We came back, and at midnight or so, we're going to bed.
I don't have it.
In the morning, because we were paired up, tied together. All of a sudden, the whole boat shook. Oh. Well, somebody, because they closed the pubs over there at 1 o'clock, had come out drunk. And he walked up to where our boats were tied. He untied the rope on the bow and pushed us, because we heard some splash, but we didn't know what it was. And he pushed the boat and fell in the water. And when we finally figured it out, we could see where he crawled up, because it was all wet along the walkway.
I want to find something here. Let me just... where's my slide of... I got to go forward, I guess. At this point here, in Route 189, I believe on this side, there's a new development, houses. There was a basin there, and I took the slide out just to shorten my lecture because I can go on for about an hour and a half with this, and I shortened it down. But there is a development here with brand new houses, and they tell me the basin is still there. Now, a basin is where there could be 11 or 12 canal boats in that basin just sitting there waiting to offload or unload, or if they didn't have any business, they would leave them there for weeks or months. But they tell me, though, the basin is still there somewhere. The canals, part of the canal is there, and a large pond-like area called the basin is there.
Well, you have to have one when you have a flight like that because it takes an hour and a half to, it could take an hour and a half to lock up too.
Yeah, well, yeah, true, yeah.
So, well, you fix that later.
Or they could wait there, I guess in Congamount Lake or something, too.
Where
Yeah.
specifically is that?
This, I want to let me see if I...
That's where the bridge is over Salmon Brook.
Yes. Here's 189. Here is the Cranbrook Park. So there's this is the park. You have to go up a hill and take a left. And right here is the train depot. Then you're going down a hill. So there are two locks, I guess the south side of Route 189, and 4 locks on the north side. And the basin is right here, and there's a development right there.
Is there remnants of that?
They tell me it's still there. I've never walked in there to see it. But people, when I said, in a prior lecture, I said the development destroyed everything. And somebody said, no, they didn't. The basin is still there. So I have to assume it's there. I just don't know where it is. Yes?
I just had an observation. When you talked about the locks being narrow, only 11 feet, that would mean that they'd fill faster.
Oh, that's true, too. Yeah, they'd fill faster, yeah.
The other thing is the question, do you have information about the diversion of the water from Farmington River between Collinsville and Unionville? As I understand it, that was a feeder canal. That was one of the major sources of water.
The Farmington River.
The Farmington River, right? There was a dam on the Farmington River near to the library, and there was a canal that diverted the water all the way from that area across and joined
the thing is, though, I really can't answer the question except to show you, go back quickly. Dum. I want to get back to... I will go back, I guess, to my painting. This is the Farmington River down here. The canal full of water is way up here. And I don't know, the distance has to be roughly 30 feet, 35 feet. So upriver somewhere, 35 feet or 40 feet up is where a dam has to be high enough to feed into the canal. So I'm pretty sure that the Salmon Brook was one of the main feeds into the canal all the way to Long Island Sound. Just like Westfield River in Warnoco, Mass. It was the main feed for Southampton to go to Northampton or down to Westfield. So there are a couple of brooks that were main feeds, I know that. But in terms of the Farmington River, I really can't answer that question. I probably can come up with an answer, but...
You know, if you look at Carl's maps, I can see here on the Granby one anyway,
Yeah.
it does say there are traces. It shows where traces remain on these maps. So specifically, this is where it was. There was a culvert, or there is still a culvert. So in this one, this is the Granby map. You can see it says that this is the locks, and it says traces remain. So if you want to look afterwards, there's one for each town, so you could look, and it does say where there's reservoir, or I have to remember the correct term, but there are places where the water
tap into water for the brooks, yeah.
And this aqueduct was in what town?
This one here, Farmington. And let me just, I think, here's Farmington. There's a golf course here. No, here's the golf course. This is Route 10, which exists now. And if you go to the Aqueduct Historical Society, there is parking there. There are signs. You park your car and walk along the towpath. And on the right, I believe, is the canal. And you walk to the end, you can see the Farmington River here.
Just below the Avon Farmington town line.
Oh, okay. not near Miss Porter's. It's
No,
further
no,
north.
it's
Lot
the
further.
north end.
On the Avon.
Yeah, because this is the Avon line right here. And I believe Route 44 is about this right up here. It goes to Hartford or, or out west.
When you're on the trail, you cross a bridge that crosses the
Here.
Farmington River.
You're right here, yes.
There, so that's nowhere near that.
No. The canal is way over here.
That's up by Avon Old Farms Hotel.
I'm not sure where that is.
Yeah, but it's south of, would be south of the hotel. That'd be right at that intersection of the Route 10 and the town line.
It's about
I'm just trying to see.
Farmington River.
See, this is
Crosses right over to Farmington.
yeah.
We've done that.
And that's the bridge.
This is the bridge that crosses the Farmington River. And again, the bridge that crosses the Farmington River is right there. And this is all nicely paved.
Oh, I just had a question, totally,
Sure.
slightly, well, different. So did you say that you made all your watercolors you did in color? But
Yes, they
you
are.
converted them to black and white?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to say, that would be really hard to paint black and white.
No, very hard. No. And I ran a little bit through Photoshop too because I was trying to get the right tones for the book. Then I look at the book and sometimes they had a little bit too much ink and some of it disappeared anyway. It's just the fact that it's printed on, regular paper. But I personally think it's more dramatic in black and white, and it does cover up some of my mistakes.
What was your art training?
Pardon?
What was your art training?
I didn't know college-wise, but just what I developed. I did go to New Jersey, the Tom's River English watercolors, and spent a week with him learning colors and whatnot. But I don't consider my grandson, who's just a freshman at Fitchburg State, he wants to be a state trooper, Fitchburg State in Massachusetts. He is an amazing artist, 10 times better than I am. But I just kind of did this because I had to do it. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. One more question.
We have books and maps, treats and...
Yes, sir.
I was going to leave you one last thing I just thought of. We talked about he's waiting 87 miles of canal. And if I remember correctly, there's over 4,000 miles of active canals. So if you want to go on a canal trip,
Take care. Thank you.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.